Hi, this is Jeff with the INTJ equation, and today I'm going to talk about Robert Greene and how he's mistyped as an INTJ when I do believe he's an INFP. If you don't know who Robert Greene is, he's probably one of the greatest authors who ever lived. He wrote some of the most important books ever, massive volumes of TE inferior greatness in my opinion. I think like the 48 Laws of Human Nature should just be a prerequisite to read as a human being. And they're all like this thick for the most part. So definitely check out his books. It's a strong suggestion. You get a lot of good insight there. The reason he comes off to people as an INTJ, I believe, is they read his books. And he comes off as very pragmatic, very go-getting sort of thing, I guess, in a way. I think that's just kind of like a combination of all of the sides of his mind, especially his ESTJ dual side that he developed through his TE inferior, writing these books and researching it and just putting in the work and really showing how brilliant INFP can actually be. So, thanks for watching this video. And also, Tom C., thank you for the suggestion. For some reason, on my YouTube channel, I could view your comment, but I can't actually reply to it. So I'll definitely check out that suggestion you gave. I appreciate you watching and hope you continue to do so. Like, share, subscribe, add me on social media, leave a comment below, send me an email, intjequation@gmail.com, check out my website, intjequation.com, add me on social media, intjequation. Let's get to the video. First clip I want to show you is Robert Greene being interviewed by The Breakfast Club. Just look at Charlemagne the God, which is a very pretentious title, and Robert Greene, even though it's a very brief excerpt of what Charlemagne was asking, he's very direct, straight to the point, where Robert Greene, in more typical INFP fashion, is very informative, takes his time what he says, kind of beats around the bush, it takes a while to say the message he wants to say, where Charlemagne just flat out asked him, like, how you doing after your stroke, or something similar like that, just to paraphrase. So an INTJ would interact similar with Charlemagne. I don't know what type he is, I haven't typed him. Very direct, straight to the point, speak very fast, like I'm doing right now. And also in this clip, he just like reminisces after being asked about his stroke, about with his SI a lot, and how he misses exercising, and kind of gets real sad about it with his FI as well. And he used to be a very avid swimmer, long distance swimming, and he can't do that now because of his health conditions. And I think it just shows how INFPs and SI users get really stuck in their past, and it must have been a really rough transition for him because he misses a thing that he loves. Kind of like an INTJ would, I guess they would have their independence taken away, and he just kind of has, something that he loved taken away, something that he remembers and reminisces on. Anyways, let's get to the clip.
Called Quibi that went bankrupt. So that deal fell apart. So if you want to do a Charlemagne, it's open, it's available.
Don't tempt me with a good time.
Right,
I would love to. I know exactly where to take it.
Okay.
I'm gonna hit you after this is over.
I'm gonna put you in touch with my agent. Okay.
Please. But listen, how did the stroke change your perspective on life?
Well, it's not been easy. I don't want to complain because now people are going through a lot of terrible stuff, with the virus, and a lot of people are dying. But I was someone who was very much into, exercise, to movement. Writing can be very stressful, and my way of de-stressing was taking a hike up here in Griffith Park, or going swimming, or going on my mountain bike. And in doing those things, some of my best thoughts would come to me. And I can't do any of that, right? So I'm sort of trapped here in the house, and I have to learn. I still can do other forms of exercise. I've had to change my whole way of thinking. But on the other hand, it's really made me work on myself, because I have flaws as well. Some of them are my impatience, the fact that I really want things to happen right now. I've had to become much more patient and, in a way, a little more humble, because I can empathize a lot with people who don't have so much control over their life, whether it's physically or financially or whatever it is. Because for a good year, I was completely dependent on people helping me just eat and do basic things. So it really kind of was a humbling experience. And I'm still dealing with it. I'm still learning from it. But it's I wish to hell it had never happened.
Hmm.
And I often am just thinking back to just the days just before I had my stroke. My life seemed so beautiful, but I didn't realize how beautiful it was. And I tell people a lot, don't take for granted the little things you have right now. Because something like this happens, they could be gone, and you don't realize until after it's gone. So it's been the worst and the most powerful experience in my life so far.
Action. This next clip is right after the release of the 48 Laws of Power, which I believe is the second book after Mastery. So I believe it's like 1999, 2000, somewhere around there possibly. You can see that Robert Greene, pre-stroke, is much younger, probably a little uncomfortable, he looks like, speaking a little bit faster, dressed up in a suit and tie, where he's a lot more casual in his other interviews that I show as he's older. And he's talking to this ENTP guy named Barry, something, I forgot his name. I'm not really doing a video on him, so I'm not too concerned about his name. Anyways, he gets another example of SI, where he's like describing one of the laws in his book, in the 48 Laws of Power, and really how you need to like think back in the past and learn from your mistakes, and use that for your present decision making like an SI user would.
The process that's involved in this that I talk about in the book is you look at yourself and you examine how perhaps something you did, something you said, something in your planning was wrong, and that was what caused this problem. And that should be a liberating thing, because what that means is you have power. You're not dependent on mommy or daddy or boss or whomever to please you, to bring you what you want. You are the one responsible for it. So when you're looking at yourself and analyzing yourself, it's not with this heaviness of, oh my gosh, I'm just such an awful person and I hate myself. It's with a lightness. It's like, I can change this. I can go at this. I won't make the same mistake before. I will look at my past and reassess it and see that I did this thing at this one critical crossroad in life. I made this mistake. I will not make it again. And I think that should not be a heaviness. It's a kind of a light feeling.
Back to the Breakfast Club, they asked him about self-reliance. INFPs actually aren't the most self-reliant type, but he does give an NE perspective of it rather than an NI perspective, which an INTJ would use an NI perspective. NE's more about seeing multiple possibilities, seeing all the possibilities, and trying things that way, where an INTJ is like all about the one thing, the one greatest path. And if we have too many possibilities, it kind of overwhelms us at time, and we get stuck with our SE inferior, and we're afraid to act because we get stuck in this analysis paralysis. We want the best situation, the best outcome. But really, we got to learn by trial and error, and just start. Like when I started making these videos, I didn't know where to start, so I just started.
And how you kind of have to have ownership in things so that you're not relying on other people. Do you think that's a trait that anybody can have?
Well, we're all wired differently. Some people are not entrepreneurial by nature. They have higher levels of fear, for example. And so there are people out there who are better off working for a large company. My father, God bless him, I loved him dearly. He worked for the same company for 40 years. He was basically a salesman, and he's kind of working on his own, but it was with this one company. So some people aren't wired for that. But the world that we live in, I think, is just a place now that kind of rewards that sort of spirit. And we're in a period coming out of the pandemic where all the signs seem to indicate that we're heading towards some kind of boom, some kind of economic boom. There's going to be incredible opportunity out there. People are dying for all kinds of new experiences. I know that very myself. We're all been cooped up in our houses, our apartments, and we're yearning for something new. And so there's going to be insane opportunities out there for starting your own business on any level. And so, you have to deal, though, first with your levels of fear. Because what happens with people is they say, I have a great idea, but I'm not ready yet. I need to find the financing. I need to find the help. And I always tell people, you go before you think you're ready, because you're going to learn a lot more when you try something. And you're going to find, like we talked about, the death ground strategy. It's either get this thing off the ground or you're going to lose a lot of money. You'll find a whole other level of energy to you. But I think all of us can learn to be self-reliant. We just have to deal with that first initial fear of failure, of being on our own, etc. And that's sort of what the 50th law was about.
This next clip, it's with Ryan Holiday, who I strongly believe is an INTJ. I haven't thoroughly typed him enough to give a 100% answer on that, but I'm pretty sure he is. And Robert Greene has collaborated with him several times in the past, so he seems much more comfortable in this interview due to some, good compatibility there, I think. And Robert Greene displays some TE, which they have in common with INTJs. INFPs do at least. And TE, especially for like low TE users like INFPs, ENFPs, I consistently get answers that how they look up to higher TE users. But in this example, they're really big on like status and reputation. And Robert Greene gives an example how he talks to this high-level basketball player and kind of brags about it a little bit, and in a very subtle way. Then the statement he gives is very interest-based, which goes back to Linda Barron's interaction styles again. Like INFPs are interest-based, where INTJs are systematic. Robert Greene kept talking about the situation where, like, he knew what the basketball player was going to get out of the situation and knew what the owner was going to get out of the situation. Then he also uses any and talks about giving other people what they want, and instead of you getting what you want all the time, you need to give other people what you want. So that's what an any user would do. I think that's something that INFPs kind of develop later in life, as Robert Greene was, I think, 58 in this interview, he said. So go ahead and just roll the clip.
And so mastering this social intelligence, as you call it, why is that something that the average person needs to know? I get why maybe the president needs to master social intelligence, but if I'm a writer or I'm an athlete or I coach a football team, walk me through the case for
Well, I mean, I've consulted with athletes, very high-level NBA basketball player. He came to me, I won't say his name, because the owner of the team was messing with him. Like, he was obviously wanting to trade him, but publicly he was saying all sorts of, he couldn't figure him out. And it really was hurting him psychologically, and it was affecting his game, and it was messing with his relationship with his wife. So it's ridiculous to think that in some field you're not having to deal with people. If you're a parent, you have to deal with your child, and children are extremely difficult. They're extremely resistant to your will. They don't want to do what you want them to do. Right. How do you deal with that? If you're bad at dealing with people, if you don't understand their psychology, if you push them too much and they resist you, you respond and react, and you get kind of defensive and bitter and resentful. And what happens is your mind is consumed 24 hours a day with, damn it, this person didn't answer my email. Damn it, this person didn't do that. It's wearing away at you. It's eating your mental space. You have no mental space for creative endeavors, for actually doing your work. It drains you. It emotionally drains you. You're imbalanced because you're constantly thinking about what people aren't giving you. I want you to reverse that perspective and think of what you're not giving people, other people, so that you can actually begin to change this dynamic and get out of that sense of waiting and passivity.
This next clip is again with Ryan Holiday, and it's a very good example of TE as well, because Ryan Holiday asked Robert Greene about his research tactics and how he does it. And Robert Greene immediately says, well, you were my research assistant, but you were number 6 on Business Writers, which was ahead of me, so I more or less fired you because you're better than me. Again, INFPs, ENFPs, low TE users especially they really look up to higher TE users. Like, they've told me this consistently. That's one reason why they like INTJs, because we have a higher TE and they can kind of learn from us because they're really insecure about using their TE and kind of think they're dumb or they're stupid in a lot of ways. But they're definitely not. If you look at Robert Greene, you can definitely see that he's not stupid. And I think it's also a good example of FI, where Ryan Holiday kind of gushes, like to compliment, and kind of, it really tickles him there, I guess. I believe he's an INTJ. When he's asked a question about his research system, he doesn't really give a system. An INTJ would, from start to finish, give exactly what he does. If somebody's systematic, like an INTP or INTJ, ENTP, any of those types would, give their system start to finish, basically, unless I guess they're keeping it a secret. So Robert's response was more interest-based, as an INFP would. And he also gives a really good example of FI hero, I think. Like, he talks about that he's biased and how he has high morals and kind of looks down on other people. So I think this is a good example of a higher FI. Not that INTJs can't be guilty of this themselves, but he definitely learned to humble himself, and that's something we can definitely learn from INFPs when they're in a healthy, mature state.
And when you sit down to research a book like this, walk us through your research methodology, because obviously I was your research assistant, and so I know it, and it changed how I come up with ideas and brainstorm and collect information. But how does that process work for you as you start to hone in on an idea that you're...
By the way, you were the best researcher I've ever had.
Thank you.
I wish I could clone you.
I would like you to let me keep doing it, but you won't.
Oh, you're too powerful. I saw that you were like number 6 on Amazon's business writer list. How can I hire someone like that to do my research? It'd be ridiculous. But anyway, I'll consider that for the next book.
Okay.
But well, the research process is very laborious, but there's a method behind the madness, which is I try and keep an open mind. Now, I have a bias towards human nature, towards people. My bias is negative. I tend to think people are actually worse than they probably are.
Okay.
As opposed to Steven Pinker, who thinks that people are probably better than they actually are. I admit my bias,
Yeah.
so that helps me. I know that that's there. But I want to combat my bias and open my mind up to all the information. So my process was to start reading books that would kind of open up different vistas on human nature. So a lot on...
This last clip is from the Breakfast Club, where Robert Greene's asked about forgiveness. I don't think this really shows much how an INFP differs from an INTJ, but rather what we can learn from INFPs, the healthy ones that are, at least. Robert Greene, talks about forgiveness and kind of just letting go and forgiving them for yourself, for your own FI. Because INTJs, we have this thing called SI demon, where somebody wrongs us, it could even not really be a legitimate excuse. We just kind of perceive that it's wrong with our inner nemesis going wild and speculating. We just shut that person out, and sometimes it's not for a good reason. This is something I've done many, many times in my life, and I've lost good friends that way. I think this is something that we can really learn about forgiveness. Is we don't forgive too often. People aren't perfect. We kind of hold ourselves up to a high standard. We also hold people up to a high standard, but we hold ourselves up to an even higher standard. So we got to be gentle with ourselves and other people, and forgive ourselves too when we make mistakes. Oftentimes we beat ourselves up. So I think Robert Greene developed his FE, and since we have FE Trickster, we can definitely learn from that. We kind of have to skate around FE because we have a lack of awareness. We can definitely use that with our TE, our SE, and really all of our functions. It's like when we use our functions, it's not like we just use one function. I think that's a big misconception. I think they kind of combo off each other. And you just got to learn to develop them and individuate, as Carl Jung would say, individuate the functions and integrate them into your ego. And he also talks about his FE, again, about being on your high horse and thinking that you're better than everybody, thinking that you're better looking, that you're smarter than everybody. That's INTJs. We can definitely get a little narcissistic in that sense. So that's something we definitely need to tone down, because there's always somebody that's going to be smarter than us. There's always somebody's going to be better than us at something. So we just need to get our heads down to ground level sometimes and humble ourselves, basically. And I think this is a good lesson that we can learn. And you can learn many, many, many lessons from his books. I strongly suggest you read them. Like I said, the 48 Laws of Power should just be a human prerequisite for living. It should be taught in school, I think.
Important is forgiveness, you think, in life?
It's very, very important. And the reason is you only have so much, you're only alive for so long, and you only have so much emotional and physical energy. And if you go through life carrying these grudges and these feelings from the past where you can't get over them, it's just draining you of energy. It's occupying very valuable mental space. and days and weeks and months go by where you're stewing over things that people have done to you. You can't get over it. And it's causing you to not focus on your work, to not be so creative. You need to have a clear mind in this world. And forgiveness is the best way to clear all that baggage out. And it begins from a basic position of humility, which I try to hammer into people's heads in the laws of human nature. I try to make you aware that you are not as great as you think you are. You're not as wonderful. You're not as good. You're not as intelligent as you think you are. Okay? You are flawed, and you're not looking in the mirror. And it's painful, but it's very important. And when you look in the mirror and you realize you are a flawed individual, then you're a little bit more forgiving of other people. You can understand your own irrationality, so you can understand the irrationality in other people. You understand your own fears and anxiety, so you can understand other people like that. So forgiveness to me, and particularly as I get older, is an extremely important trait. It's something I've lived by for many years. I really don't like the feeling of carrying any kind of grudge. It makes me feel kind of ugly and dirty inside.
That concludes this day's internet mistyping. Thank you for watching. If you like the content, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. Tell me somebody that you would like, that you think is mistyped, that you would like me to kind of look at, and maybe I'll do a video on it soon. I really enjoy doing these videos, and I think I've had some good feedback on them as well. So just let me know if you like these, if you'd like to hear somebody that you think is mistyped that I can look into. And also like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, add me on social media, Discord, all that stuff's in a good description. Thank you for going beyond the clickbait. Have a great day.